Okay, so this month for our sew along we made the closet core Rika jeans. So I made view B with all the hammer loop etc pockets on it. So I made them up in our 10-ounce poppy red denim. So yeah, I hope you enjoy the sew along with it, and it helps you with your sewing. So that's the pockets on the back and the front pocket there, hammer loop there, and then the tool pocket, I think they call it there. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to be making the closet core Rika pants. So I'm going to make this style here with the utility style hammer loop and tool pocket, etc. I'm not going to do the turn ups. I live in the New Forest, so walking on the forest, I'll just collect a load of heather in them. So I'm just going to do the normal hem, but just make them slightly cropped. Okay, so I'm going to do it in 2 videos. So the first one, this will be part 1, and we're going to cover doing all the pockets and completing the backs with all the pockets attached, and then do the front pockets and possibly the belt loops. So those are all the pieces done. And then part 2 I'll make of doing the inserting the fly zip and putting the trousers together, attaching the belt loops and doing the waistband and the hems. Okay, so the first bit for is to interface all your having cut out and put all your marks and your notches and your tailor's tacks and everything in. The first bit is to interface, so it wants you to interface these pieces. It clearly marks it here, so you only want to interface the fly shield bit of the right pant, and it's the right as you wear it, and then it wants you to interface, you'll have cut 2 of C, D and E, so it wants you to just to interface 1 each of those, and then your fly shield, which is K, and then your pocket facings, which is G. Okay, so it's going to want you to do all those, but it clearly marks it on there. So then the next thing we're going to do is get the your back piece, and we're going to do the darts. So I'm just going to pull this away from my tailor's tacks without losing them, hopefully. Thank you. Angle that camera a wee bit better. Right, so I've got all my markings here. I've got my these marks at the top here for where my the belt loops will go. These are for the pocket corners to attach, and this is for my dart. And I've just snipped into the dart legs at the top there to form my darts. So we'll separate those 2 off. Where's my scissors? Over there. Some more scissors. Oops. Oops. Coming off there. Stop that coming off. One to one side, right. Good. Oh, disappearing pattern pieces there, right. Move that out of the way. Okay, so we're going to get just fold it so that your dart legs are together at the top there. So I did do a toil. I'll always do a toil for my always do a toil for trousers. I find I just need to do some slight adjustments, so I have to reduce, for me personally, I just have to reduce the front rise slightly and increase the back rise slightly. So I have to adjust all that. otherwise the pattern, it does give you a lot of measurements for this pattern, so closet core are usually really good at that. So then I'm just going to draw in, I've pinned it, the dart legs together there and at the dart point, and then I'm just going to mark from there down to there with a heat erasable pen. It's just what I prefer to use. Okay, like that. So I'm going to do exactly the same with the other one, stitch those in place, and then we'll start sorting out the pockets. Okay, so that's the darts sewn in place, and then you just need to press them towards the centre back. Okay, so that's towards the crotch seam, so move those out of the way. So then we want to sort out the pockets. So first ones it wants you to do are the back pockets, back patch pockets. So I prefer to, it doesn't tell you to, but I prefer to just put some edge tape along where the notch is on the pocket. So that's just the Vaseline edge tape. I just think it helps to stop the pockets stretching out, particularly when you use them. I'm always sticking my phone in my back pocket, so it just helps to stop them from stretching out. So that's the notch there. Then it suggests you fold it by ½ inch and then fold it again like that. Okay, and then we're gonna, sorry, the other way, that way, and then like that, and then stitch down the sides there, and then we'll turn it through. I prefer to, I'm just going to turn it back the once by the notch there, so I have overlocked my edges and I've overlocked all around. You don't have to overlock them all around, I just prefer to, but just be careful that you don't take any off the edge, otherwise you can change the shape of the pocket. Okay, so I'm just going to turn that where those notches are on the side there, pin that in place. And the same with that one there. Do exactly the same for the other pocket, and then we're just going to stitch down there, yeah, ½ inch seam allowance down there and down there. Okay, and then we can turn them through to the other side, and then we'll do the tulle pockets, and I'll also show you how I like to put a design on my pockets, so I'll show you how I do that. Okay, so that's the I just stitched down there, so then we're just going to turn that around, turn that in. I don't tend to trim these corners if they're at a right angle, it just helps to keep them, make them nice, and so just get a point turner, push the points out there, and the same again there. Okay, get that pressed like I've done with that one, and then I'm just going to turn under those edges as we go around and press it so that it's just like that one, and then I'm going to stitch across there, 2 stitch lines just across the top there. Okay, 2 stitch lines across the top there to top stitch that in place. Okay, and then I'm going to get a template and we'll draw on the template and what I'm going to do for my pocket design. Okay, so I've sewn the pockets. Okay, done my 2 rows of top stitching along there, and then I've just got a template. So the Closet Core website, if you sign up to their details, you can get a whole load of pocket ideas, templates that you can use. So I just photocopy one off and then just keep the rest as a main copy. And then you can line that up with that on there. Just put some carbon paper underneath. And a bit of some chalk on. And then get a tracing wheel. That way. Get a tracing wheel, and then you're just going to go over those lines, literally. I should have moved it up a bit, but I think that'll be right there. it's a good idea sometimes if you've got some odds and ends of different colours of top stitching thread. So I tend to do sort of a mixture of colours to put a bit of a design on the pockets. And that one there. Okay, and then when you take that off, I've hopefully got some chalk marks I can follow. Yeah, so then I've got my chalk marks on there I can follow. That's okay. Yeah, it's quite far down, but I think that'll be all right. Yeah, I do. Right. So just putting it on the other side, then obviously it's an asymmetrical pattern. So I just need to turn that over, position that on there. Pin that off, pin that on the same place. That back under there, and then do exactly the same thing, but just using those lines so you can follow the I've turned the template upside down, and then you can follow the perforation marks where you've drawn it before. And then across there. Okay, and then you end up with you know, asymmetrical. That one's going that way and that one's going that way, rather than both going off the same way. Okay, so I'm going to go and stitch those now, and then we'll do the tool pocket, I think it is next, and then the hammer loop, and then we'll attach them to the track. Okay, so that's my pockets stitched. Okay, it's worth just putting one on top of the other just to check that you've turned them all under the same you've got them the same size. Okay, so that's those done. Put those to one side for a moment. Then next it wants you to do your tool pocket. So you've got the, what do they call it, the mini carpenter pocket and the angled carpenter pocket. Okay, so it wants you on the instructions to turn it under 1/2 inch and then turn it again. I prefer to put again some edge tape along there, just on that side, and then overlock the edge and then just turn it under the once, just because it makes it less bulky, but it stops it also from stretching out using the stay tape. So then I've done exactly the same with that one there and turned it under. So now I'm going to do 2 rows of top stitching. One, I think it's about 3 millimeters from the edge, and then again in about 1/4 inch from that. All right, so I'm going to do those, and then we're going to baste it together like that. Okay, just baste it along those, just with a long stitch around those edges there. Okay, and then we're going to press the edges under and fix it to the back trouser leg. Okay, so I've stitched that in place. I've stitched that and basted that together. Right, and I did overlock around that, the long side and the bottom, but you don't have to. So then you've got a notch here on your pocket edge that will join up with your notch there. Okay, and then you just want to make sure, it's worth getting your patch pocket, placing that roughly where it's going to go, matching up those pocket markings there, and just making sure that you get that edge of there lined up with there. So I'm just going to put a pin there where I want that to be. I feel like I'm pinning it with something else now. That's got to go over a bit yet. So I'm just going to pin, oops, one in place there. Pin that at the side, needs to be. Pin those edges under. Okay. So then once you've got that in place, so then what we're going to do, once I've pinned all that around, to make sure that's in place, that corner to make sure that's in. So I'm going to pin that on there, and then we're going to stitch around. So you're going to stitch around, top stitch around there and up to there, 2 rows of top stitching. Okay, and then yeah, then we're going to apply the patch pocket and then do the hammer loop and the patch pockets on the left back. Okay, so for the hammer loop, we're going to stitch down there, so it doesn't actually say, but looking at the instructions you want that to be in the center. So I did 5/8 of an inch, 1.5 centimeters seam allowance down there, and then pressed it open like that, and then it wants you to turn it in the opposite way, turn it inside out as it were. So the easiest way to do it is with a safety pin. Just put that on top, threadle that in once you get it going. Turning to the inside, it's not too bad, it's just a bit of a fiddle because it's quite a bulky one to turn out, but that's the easiest way to do it with a safety pin. You've got no end to push against with a loop turner or something. Okay, so then I'm going to give that a press. So you want your seam in the centre there. Okay, so I'm going to give that a press, and then it wants us to do 2 rows of top stitching down both those, a row of top stitching rather down each of those sides. Okay, so I'll give that a press and do those, and then we can get that lined up on the left leg along with the pocket and then the pocket. Right. So that's my hammer loop. So I did do 2 rows of top stitching down each side just because I thought one row didn't quite match up with my other stitching, so I've just done 2 rows, but it's entirely up to you. So then you've got a notch in the centre, or the centre there of your the straight edge there, and that joins up with the notch on the side there. So just put a pin in that one there, like that. Okay, and then you're going to want to flip that round and join that into your corner edge of your pocket there. So it will go like that. Okay, so I'm going to pin the rest of that in place. Just check that is tucked under well. Yeah, that's fine. So I've got a pin in there, keep that in place. Okay, so then you're just going to want to stitch around your pocket here and then just baste that in place down there. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and then we're going to join the 2 back pieces together overlock the back crotch seam, and then top stitch down there, and that's the back's done. Okay, so that's the other side, that's the left leg done, and I just basted that and stitched around there and basted that in place along there. We'll do some bar tacks in a bit, but I'll do that when I've got them together. So next we're going to join the centre back crotch seam. So we're going to put right sides together, just line up the double notch in the back there, and we're going to sew this at 5/8 of an inch, and then we're going to trim it down. So I'm going to use a serger overlocker just to neaten that edge, but you can trim it down and then zigzag however you on your machine, or if you've got an overcast stitch on your machine you can use that. So we're going to do that and then press the seam towards the right leg, and then I am going to top stitch down mine. It says it's optional, but as it's like a jean style, I'm definitely going to do that on mine. So I'm going to stitch that 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, overlock it so that it trims it down to about 1 centimetre seam allowance, press it towards the right leg, and then top stitch. Okay, so that's the crotch seam sewn, and then I've just done some long, sort of quite loosely bar tacks just down those outer edges, just reinforces those pockets. As I say, I do use mine a lot for my phone. So put that to one side, that's the back's done. So next we're going to do the pockets for the front. So we want piece F, which is your pocket lining. Okay, well, piece F, which is your pocket lining, piece G, which is your top pocket facing, and piece H, which is your bottom pocket facing. Okay, so we want all those pieces there, and what we're going to do is we're going to line them up like so, like that. Okay, so we want the wrong side, so that when you fold your pocket, when your pocket is assembled, you'll still see your pocket lining from the inside, just a pop of colour, because you don't see anything on the inside of your pocket. So it's nice if you can do it the other way around if you like, but it does suggest that you do it this way, and it is nice to see a pop of colour. So you want that to line up there on that one, and then that to line up there. You do have a notch lining up that one there, to make sure you get the right side. And it does say to neaten off the edges of piece G and H, so just neatened off that edge around there, so along there, just that long side of that of G and the curved edge of side H, ready to fix onto there. So then we're going to pin that in place like I've done with this one here. Okay, so I've done that with this one here, pinned that all in place, and then we're just going to stitch around all the way around this, just to fix these pieces to the pocket lining. So they suggest stitching it round, yeah, with a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around the edge there, and all the way around that there. So I'm going to do that on both of those. Okay, so that's the pocket facing pieces put on there, but on the pocket lining. So in the instructions then it says to fold that over one side together, and then stitch 1.5 centimetre seam allowance along that curved edge, and then fix that to your trousers. But I just think that's a more complicated way of doing it, so I'm going to do it the way I would normally do it. So you just want your that's it, that way right. So you want your, so I'm going to do it this way. You want your pocket bag lined up along there, notches join in the middle there. Okay, and then that will fold over to the wrong side and form your pocket like so. Okay, so I'm going to stitch both of those together, seam allowance, and then I'll attach my pocket edges together in a minute. So seam allowance, it says, so I'm going to stitch that along there, 1.5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then we're going to grade the seam, and then we're going to press that over to the wrong side and top stitch, but I may just understitch that as well. So I'll do that and then I'll show you what I've done. Okay, so where are we? So I've stitched that seam together there, and then I've graded my seam so that you've got that at different levels just to get rid of some of the bulk. And then I've pressed the seam allowance towards the facing, so the seam allowance is going towards the facing piece, the lining, and then I have decided to understitch, which it doesn't say in the pattern, because you are going to top stitch, but I think if you understitch it, then when you turn it over to that side, it makes sure that you've got that edge folded under well, and then you can top stitch down that edge. I've done the 2 rows because I'm doing everything with the carpenter pockets, etc. So I've done the 2 rows of top stitch in there, and then I find it's easier then, rather than do this pocket bit earlier, then it's easier to pin this together now and stitch the bottom of your pocket seam now, whereas they suggest to do it earlier and then fit the pocket. But I think it's much easier to do it this way. It makes it much easier stitching your pocket in and top stitching and everything if you do this bit at a later date. So I've just got left now to stitch around 1.5 or 16mm rather, and 5/8 of an inch around that bottom pocket edge around there. Okay, just the pocket edge bit. Okay, and then so I'll stitch around there, and then I'll overlock to neaten that edge. And then the only other thing I just need to do is to line up those notches there, and then baste that in place down the side there, and also along the top there, So I'll do that and then show you what I've done, and then that might be it for today. So I'll just do those few bits. Okay, so that's the pocket sewn on. I've basted along the top to secure those in place, and also down the sides. So that's the pockets. Okay, front pockets. So I'm just going to put those to one side for a minute. So I'm going to jump ahead now just to do the belt loops for this part of the video, and then for part 2 of the video we'll do the fly and assembling them together. So we'll just add on the this bit here, just time wise it's better. So it wants you to, I'm going to do the wide belt loops, so I just need to stitch along this piece N. I'm going to stitch along there, I think it's 5/8 of an inch, yeah, 5/8 of an inch seam allowance down there, and I'm going to press the seam open and turn them in the right way, and then top stitch them. So I'll do those and then show you what I've done there. Okay, so I've stitched down there, okay, and then just press the seam open so that it's like that. Okay, so there's the seam, just press that open so that it's down the centre of there, and then just going to pin that on there. Most difficult bit about this is to get it going, but once you get it started it's not so bad. It is a bit of a fiddle. But my loop turner, I need a you need an end really to push against get it started. So I'm just going to thread that along and then pull that out to turn it in the other way. All right, so I'm going to fiddle about with that. I don't really need to see me do that on camera. It just takes a while to get it through sometimes. Just keep pulling it. Yeah, so I'll do that. Okay, so that's the nice wide belt loops done. I really like those, so yeah, pleased with those. So yeah, just turned it in the right way, gave it a press so that your seam that you sewed is down the back, and then you're just going to top stitch. Now it says to just top stitch one row, a bit skew there, but that's fine. Just one row each side, but I've just decided to do 2 on each side, and then it says to cut them up into your segments, 6 equal lengths of 3.75 inches long. Okay, so they're quite long, but I'm not going to do those yet till I'm ready to attach them to the waistline. Okay, so we'll do those at a later date. So I'm going to put those to one side for the moment. So that completes the first part of the sew along for the Rika jeans. So part 2 will cover the insertion of the zip fly, attaching the belt loops to the waistband, putting the waistband on, sewing the inseam and the side seams and the hem and the buttonhole button to complete